The quadratic formula. The quadratic formula can be used to solve any of our quadratics, so anything raised to the second power, but it has to be used if the quadratic cannot be solved by factoring. So just some reminders that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That is a standard form of a quadratic, and anytime we go to solve the quadratics, they have to be in standard form. Our quadratic formula is over here. It's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You do not have to memorize this. It will always be given to you. A, b, and c are coming from our standard form. We have our a is always in front of x squared, b is always in front of x, and c is the number. But just always remember this box. We have to be in standard form before we plug the a, b, and c into our formula. All right, so let's go through some examples. So at the top I have our standard formula, which will always be given to you, and our quadratic formula. All right, I'm going to start by labeling. So a, in my first example, the number in front of x squared. So in this case, the number is 1 because we don't see it, but we still have an x. B is in front of x, which is positive 2. C is at the end, which is negative 8. All right, now we can plug it into our formula. So x equals negative, and I always use parentheses when I'm plugging in. So negative parentheses b, which is 2, plus or minus square root b squared, so 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 8. And all of that is over 2 times a, which is 1. Now I'm going to start to simplify some things. So x equals negative 2, so I have negative 2 plus or minus the square root, and then I'm just going to combine all this into one number. So I have 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8. And all you have to do is plug that into your calculator. And that gives us 36 all over 2 times 1, which is 2. I'm just going to put x equals in front. Now I have to continue to simplify. So I have the square root of 36. And I need to break that down. But if I remember back to that notes, 36 is actually one of my perfect squares. And that's broken down to 6 times 6. So this fraction really turns into x equals negative 2 plus or minus 6 all over 2. Plus or minus, that now is going to create two different fractions for us. So one, I'm going to have x equals negative 2 plus 6 over 2. And then the second one is x equals negative 2 minus 6 over 2. And if you're good with the calculator, you could plug all that in, or we go step by step. Negative 2 plus 6, that gives me positive 4 over 2. So in this case, 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then my second answer, negative 2 minus 6, that gives me negative 8 over 2. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. And that's my second answer. So x equals 2 and x equals negative 4 for this first example. Now let's look at the second example. Second example, it does not equal 0. It is not in standard form. So the first thing I need to do is get this in standard form. So I'm going to subtract 4 from each side. And then that gives me 2x squared minus x minus 4 equals 0. Now I can start to label everything. So a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 1, and c is equal to negative 4. I'm just going to plug it into my formula. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus square root negative 1 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And then we're just going to clean that up a little bit. So I have x is equal to negative 1 gives me a positive 1 plus or minus square root, and then I just have to plug everything underneath the square root sign into my calculator. Don't plug in the square root sign though. And then that will give me 33 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. I have my square root sign, so I'm going to come over to the side and I'm going to see if I can simplify that. So square root of 33, that can be broken down to 3 and 11. Nope, so it doesn't look like 33 can get any smaller. Last thing I have to check, can my fraction get smaller? So can 1 be divided by 4? No, so this is actually as simple as our answers will be. So x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4. Those are both of my answers. Big things to remember is that before we can use the quadratic formula, we have to have it equaling 0. And then we just plug in the numbers. You can still look to factor and solve these, but if a quadratic is not factorable, you have to use the quadratic formula.